West Coast.
Let's just go inside.
How y'all doing?
All right.
Woohoo! Doing
Pretty
great.
good.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Christina.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, hey, hey.
Yeah, are we just waiting for John?
Yeah.
I think so. We were
morning,
all on
everyone.
mute.
I even see my team lead.
Hi all.
Quick, say something before we get muted.
Good morning from Australia.
Hi everyone.
Woohoo!
Good morning.
Glad to be here.
Hi from
Morning.
Montreal.
Hey
Hi,
from
Montreal.
Montreal. Hey from Los Angeles.
Bonjour,
Hi
monsieur.
from New Zealand.
Hi from Phoenix. Bonjour. Vous allez bien?
Hello.
Ça va
I'm
bien,
on
Ça
the
va,
Modified
Michelle?
Freeway in Los Angeles. I can't see you. Hello.
Who else is at Los Angeles?
Orlando,
Hi.
Florida here. Orlando, Florida here.
Hi,
Hi.
Orlando. Hi.
Hi,
Winter Haven,
Orlando.
Florida.
Oh, that's
I'm in
fun.
Florida too.
Oh, there we go.
What's
Hey,
up?
trying to survive the
Sweet
hurricane.
16s on here.
That's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Everybody, I have to cut you off, but so it just like really warms my heart to see everybody saying hi and everything. We are going to get this call started. It's so great to see all your smiling faces. And yeah, if we could just like go around and everybody say hi, it'd be great. But I have a feeling it'd be a little chaotic. So anyways, here we are, first week of September. And I just wanted to say how much I've been enjoying everything that everybody's been posting. I feel like the energy with these groups that we're creating, It's just like really, you see like the way people are coming together and learning from each other, and it's already just like really inspiring Kathy and I like crazy. So I just wanted to take, are there any group leaders that might like to kind of raise their hand and share like a quick update on how things are going with your group? Is there anybody who'd like to do that?
How do I raise a hand?
Hey, we got somebody. Here we go. How's it going, man?
All right. Is it me?
It's you.
All right. What's up? Yes, I'm from Team 4, the 4 tune makers, because we're gonna make 4 tunes and we're gonna make a fortune. All of that. But yeah, we're basically we're looking good. We're all talking on Boxer quite frequently, sharing ideas, sharing the songs from the homework, from the assignment, all the stuff that we are getting.
Sorry about that. I had a phone call that like went through my desktop. Hopefully, if you heard the ringtone there, it didn't disturb you. Did you have anything else you wanted to say? That sounded great. Like it sounds like you're really off to a great start so far.
No, it's all good. Look, things are looking good. Looking forward to get going and to get the learning going.
Boxer's pretty fun, isn't it?
Yeah. It's pretty cool. Everybody's kind of uses it in their own different way, but it's really good to share ideas through there and stuff. Like people are already like shooting verses and choruses and doing melodies and stuff like that. So it's really cool.
Awesome. Well, great. I'll go ahead and mute yourself. I'm actually going to mute everybody again. I might have to do this periodically. Just if anybody, just as an etiquette thing, please don't unmute yourself unless you're called upon. Just because like if you have your microphone unmuted and there's like rustling noises, literally like everybody on the call hears it. So is there anybody else? You can either raise your hand. There's a way to raise your hand, or you could just like literally the first person to unmute themselves and say, hey, I'm from team whatever, who wants to give an update. Let's hear one more.
All right, team 1, Alpha team.
We got you. How's it going, man?
Going great. So we had a few meetings. Right now we're still using this meeting app, which is great. And so yeah, 10 of us having a great old time, getting to know each other, people from all over the world. It's pretty awesome.
Amazing, right? It just bridges so many gaps to like be able to like use this technology to connect from like different countries and different parts of the world. That's so great. Well, I'm glad to hear it. All right, quickly, one more. Destiny Love, I see you there. I'm gonna unmute you, or you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
I sure can. Hey, how's it going?
Great. Hi, great. How are you?
Good. Yeah,
Good.
Coffee. I'm all good to go.
Yeah, I just had my matcha.
How's
I'm from, our group is great. We're from Team 22, and we've named ourselves the Catchy 22s. And we had a really nice first Zoom meeting. So we're keeping Zoom as our platform. And we got a bonus when we were on past 40 minutes. Zoom gave us a little up. And so we got to stay on the call for like an hour and 10 minutes together.
That's great.
Just dropping in and getting to know each other. Yeah, it's great. And so we have a Facebook group and feels like a really supportive group of people.
Awesome. That's so good. Yeah, I know that Zoom, like first time that you go over time, they give you like a freebie to try to rope you in. But yeah.
Yeah, it worked. I think we're going to stick.
You could probably rotate between different people's accounts if you wanted to keep getting the freebie. You could do that.
That's a great idea.
Convoluted, but you could every one of you could set up an account, and then you could just rotate between them if you wanted to get longer calls without having to pay for it. Don't tell Zoom I said that. Not that I think it matters.
You can go for the 40 minutes though, and then get off and then log on again.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, what she said. Awesome.
Did you hear me? Destiny?
It's a good idea.
Everybody heard you. Yeah, I think we got it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and unfortunately don't have much more time because I want to make sure we get into like everything I want to talk about tonight. But we might have an opportunity a little bit later on for additional like check-ins or like question and answers about any of this stuff. But I want to dive into kind of what we're going to be covering tonight, which is, first off, I just want to say that it's clear to me from the stuff that people are posting and just from your enthusiasm with the assignments, you're getting it, which is really good. I apologize. I'm going to have to go ahead and sorry, I have to keep doing this. Otherwise, as people get added on, sometimes they unmute themselves unintentionally. But like I was saying, by the way, welcome to everybody who joined us. We were just doing a couple check-ins with a couple of the groups, and everybody seems to be having a great time with it, using Voxer and Zoom to connect with each other and getting excited about the assignments and already kind of jumping ahead a little bit, which is cool. And so now redirecting, what I want to talk about tonight is because now that you're starting to shift your mentality towards being a professional in the music industry, towards actively making music that there's a current market for, it's time now to get a clear perspective on like kind of the big picture kind of stuff. Because this is really going to help you to make good decisions about like, where do I want to put my resources in when I'm putting this EP together? What's going to be the best strategy for me to like basically how do I set myself up for the best chances of success, like right off the bat? Apologize, got to just go back in. Once again, for anybody who hops on the call, please don't unmute yourself because when you unmute yourself, everybody hears you. I hear that somebody keeps unmuting themselves. So please don't do that. Thank you. So first thing I want to talk about is like, this is basically licensing industry 101, like getting the entire picture is what we're going to be talking about tonight. So you're going to be talking about the places that you can put your music. We're going to be talking about the players. We're going to be talking about the pitchers. So those are like the three things we're going to be talking about tonight. So the first thing I want to talk about tonight is where to get your music onto, basically the places that you're going to be targeting, like where could your music potentially go on to? And there's a pretty lengthy list, and I'll go into detail with each one of them. So of course, like number one, there's like, and these are in no particular order. For the most part, they're kind of ordered a little bit, but like some of these are interchangeable. And just because one thing is towards the top of the list doesn't mean that you couldn't be wildly successful being great at getting placements in like a certain bucket, you know, like whether it's like, if you're just really good at getting your music into podcasts, then you could potentially make a living doing that. It's just a matter of, but that's maybe not like, that's like kind of an emerging market right now. So that's actually a pretty exciting time to be getting in on that kind of stuff. But we'll start with films. So you're going to have big budget projects all the way down to indie projects with like almost no budget. And all of these films need music. So they need music, they need background music, they need kind of featured kind of stuff. They need end credits and opening credits kind of music. And a lot of times, some of these songs are like most of the music that's made for films that's like orchestral is done by a composer. So we're not talking about like doing like film composing kind of stuff here. That's not really the focus of what we talk about at Catch the Moon and Six Figure Songwriting. But that's like a whole other beast, is like the relationships that composers have with film directors, and then they together create, instead of like a music supervisor per se, they will literally just kind of meld their minds together and come up with a really creative vision for the music for the entire movie. But then there's potentially also going to be like music that a music supervisor would come in and they would find music for specific scenes, or it could be a thing where there really isn't a lot of like orchestral stuff, but there is a ton of like just music going on throughout the film. And so there's obviously a big market for that. There's lots of projects always going on. There's big, small studios. Second thing I want to talk about is ads. So you're going to have ads that are on TV. You're going to have ads that are online. And there's sometimes campaigns where they run both on TV and online. So it's like, once again, like all kinds of budgets, everything from like huge stuff that's going to be running like 2/3 of the year to like stuff that just like runs for a weekend, or like or even like a couple weeks, or maybe even a day, you know. Some spots, you know, they just don't need it for very long. But there's a huge array of different projects, different ads that are made every week, and they need music. Next, network TV shows. So they need everything from source music. So source music is kind of like in a TV scene, if it's like a scene in a bar or something like that. So the source music in a scene like that might be like the jukebox that's in the corner. It might be playing some music in the background. And so, you know, depending on the bar, they would want music that kind of fits in the style of what might spin on the jukebox in that bar. So that's a good opportunity. That's actually like some of the lower hanging fruit in terms of like terms of like show placements and also film placements is kind of like that background, not featured stuff. But then you have like these big features as well. You have like the features where it's like with a vocal, usually with a vocal, but sometimes just an instrumental with like a narration over the top of it. And you know what I'm talking about, these kind of montage scenes or like closing scenes in TV shows. These are like the ones where you'll get substantially more money than like the background ones from your PRO, because it's literally like a more intense usage of the song and a more featured usage of the song, so you get paid more for that. So those are two ways in which songs get used on network TV. The same thing applies to streaming shows. So anything that's on like, so that's the next category, is like there's these network TV shows, but then there's also all these online platforms and streaming services, and a lot of them have their own production companies, and they aren't networks. So it's a little different the way that they operate. But there's tons of them. And there's actually so many of them. I was watching a video last night that was just kind of playing a joke on the whole thing, because like literally there's so many streaming services now that you can't even keep track of them all, and you'd probably go bankrupt if you tried to sign up for even half of them. The proliferation of them is just crazy. But the thing that's good for people like us is that because there's such an explosion of this content that's just constantly being created for these different services, there's really like so many opportunities to get songs onto different shows from different platforms. Most of them have their own production companies that are either tightly affiliated with it, or they're literally built straight into the company. Like Netflix makes their own original programming, for example. Amazon makes their own original programming, for example. There's many, many, many more examples. Next thing, film trailers. So there's trailer houses that assemble film trailers, and that's an entirely, for the most part, it's a different beast than like the music that's made for the film, because it's more the marketing for the film than the actual film itself. So it's pretty rare that I've heard that they'll use a song for a trailer and then they'll also use it in the actual movie. Typically it's like a thing where they pick the music specifically to market the movie. In these cases with film trailers, and a lot of the stuff is like trailerized music, so it's stuff with like big drums and like big epic cuts and things that really flow into for action movies, for example. You know, different movies are going to use different types of music, but there's a huge opportunity and tons of places that throw together trailers, and these are good places to get your music into, is film trailers. Next thing, show promos. So this is kind of these are the film trailers for TV. Promos are typically, they're either single show promos, or what they'll do, and one of the more recent placements I got was for an ABC, I think it was like a Thursday night comedy lineup or something like that, earlier this spring. And what they do is they basically, it's the music that's going on when they're talking about like all the stuff that's all the fun shows that are happening. Yeah, it's like that kind of thing. Show promos they can be like kind of like network themed, like just as like a certain night's lineup. It could be for a specific show. And these promos usually don't run for very long. They'll usually run somewhere between like a week or like up to a month. They typically don't run for a super long time, and you won't get it. I don't even think you get residuals from them, but they basically, they pay pretty well. They don't pay as well as ads, but they seem to pay pretty well. And the other aspect of show promos is what are called sizzles. So sizzles they're kind of like a show promo, but it's more like a network promo. So it's those huge, long, like 2.5 minute ones that HBO or like Stars, these huge networks put together that showcase all the up and coming songs. And it'd just be like We Got It All is kind of like the theme of it. For example, like one thing could be like, We Got It All drama, We Got It All comedy, We Got It All action. And then it's like, but it's done over the course of like 2 minutes, and it's kind of built up, and it feels really good. And for anybody who wants an example of that, you can just type in like HBO Sizzle into YouTube or like Stars Sizzle, and you'll definitely pull up stuff that is relevant. Some of them are like really hype you up kind of sizzles, and then some of them are like more like slow burn kind of, especially if they're like promoting like dramatic content. I saw one not too long ago that an artist named Ruel was the featured artist on, and it was just blew me away. It's so good. But it's like a slower burn kind of thing. But some of them are just like a little more, I'd say more of them tend to be like more kind of like make you bob your head and feel good. So once again, show promos, show sizzles, network sizzles are like another great place to get your music onto. Next thing, so here's some folks. Again, welcome everybody who's on the call. I'm going to mute everybody once again. If you've accidentally unmuted yourself for any reason, please mute yourself. I hear somebody is unmuted, and for some reason it's not letting me mute them. Okay, I think it's fixed. Yeah, once again, just it's just like if you're unmuted, then everybody can hear you on the call, and it's distracting. So please don't unmute yourself. And I'm sorry for like needing to say that so many times. And thank you everybody who's been like so great about like not unmuting yourself too. I'm gonna keep going though. I love talking about this stuff. The next thing I want to talk about is video games. So video games use all kinds of music. Now, the music that they tend to use is it's a little more. Sorry, could you please mute yourself if you're unmuted? Thank you. Super distracting. But here we go. So we're just gonna keep rolling. So video games are another great place to get your music into. Some video games use all different kinds of music. For example, like Grand Theft Audio uses music from like all different genres. I know they created a lot of their own original music for that show. Some of these projects you need to get kind of looped into by the studio, but one of the things that you can know about this, and the same thing applies to like, I think TV shows and films as well, is once you start to build a reputation and you start building trust, there are going to be situations where you can kind of get looped in on different original, basically like opportunities to submit tracks for specific things that are written for like a specific purpose. So for example, like, you know, for a video game like Grand Theft Audio where they need like some urban stuff that's clean or something like, or not clean, has like a specific lyric, they might be like, we really like what you do. Can you make a couple tracks for us like this? Or they might have an open call, but it's usually like, I think for those kinds of things, they want stuff that's like written specifically for the game. But there's also tons of music that gets used in different sports games, I'm just thinking about all the games, like some of the, also like promotional materials for the video games too. And that can kind of fall on the same lines as like trailers, like film trailers, video game trailers have a lot of common things to them. If you look up some game trailers, they have like that same kind of epic, big, like especially a lot of like the action first person shooter kind of video games. Any game that has like a ton of action in it, they're going to use music that exemplifies like what that feeling is that they want people to have when they're seeing the game and in awe of it, and makes them want to buy it. So that's another great angle, is video games, like thinking about the kinds of music. Once again, there's some composers that work specifically with video games. So we're not talking about like necessarily the scoring of video games, but there are opportunities to submit original music for these games, for all the games that are out there. And then there's also, next thing I want to talk about is retail. So you've probably noticed in pretty much every single store you walk into in a mall, I can't remember the last time I was at a mall, but last time I went to a mall, or just like any store, like really any big box stores, they all have music that plays inside them. And there are, like, most of the time it's not a radio station. And the reason is that they want to curate, they want to keep the cost down for that kind of stuff. Sometimes it's like cheaper for them to just to buy like literally, and plus they don't want to have conflicting advertising that's going on like while shoppers in there. Could you imagine like you're in a Walmart and then there's a Target ad that goes on the radio? It just wouldn't play well with Walmart's corporate brass. So what they'll do is they'll work with different companies. A lot of them are music production libraries that will assemble kind of radio stations, themed radio stations based off of like what they want, like retail, positive pop for retail would be like an example, like a theoretical playlist that a retailer could basically purchase the rights to use as like a radio service. So they have like a way of connecting in. There's a couple libraries I have some songs in where it's that kind of deal where, and the residuals can be pretty good. It can be smaller stuff, but it's like, it can add up if you have a ton of songs that are getting rotated in a bunch of stores. So that's another good angle, is in retail. And then finally, I just wanted to mention this because this was something that we talked about a bit at Sync Keepers, but podcasting is exploding as an industry, if you haven't noticed. And there's a ton of music that's needed for podcasts. So there's a huge opportunity potentially for your music to be on podcasts. And once again, it's just, I think it's a matter of like getting into the correct production libraries and getting connected with the right people to get your stuff into consideration for that. One of the people that we had at the Sync Keepers conference was a guy who does quite a bit of that. So yeah, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but that is really like the bulk of, and I'm sure there might be like a thing or two here and there those are the main ones in terms of the places to get your music into. So these are all good things to keep in mind, because in a way, like, there's literally so many different angles you could take with this when you're going about marketing your music. And part of making the target that you're setting up to try to hit is that you want, like, part of the target is like, where are you trying to get your stuff into? So to make the music without any kind of context around like, what are you trying to like, actually like having a song that has a good reference, it might actually like, and has a placement already, you kind of have that already figured out to a certain extent, unless the placement was just like kind of a quirky thing. But if the music really aligns with, like, for example, like kind of upbeat indie rock, positive lyrics, like super catchy, ends up in an ad, that's not like rocket science. That totally makes sense. So like, you know, advertising, for example, would be a great place to market that kind of music if that's the kind of music you want to make. So what you're wanting to do is, like, as you're going through here and you're figuring out, okay, what is it that I like that's cool and marketable and modern? Where can I put this? What kinds of placements could the music be in? Because that's going to help inform some of the decisions you're making around the production. Well, if you want to make stuff in ads, then you'll really want to like kind of like study not just the ad music that is in your genre, but just kind of study some ad trends and really like dive into the iSpot TV playlists and really like dig into like, what are some themes that are working, what's working right now, and it can help inform your decisions. Versus if you were like more working for trailers, it would be a little different because the themes tend to be different. The music tends to be slower, not always, but it definitely tends to be a little less upbeat a lot of the time, in like the super cheery kind of way. So I'm going to transition now into we're going to transition into the players now. So these are the people that, like, the key decision makers. They basically decide what music gets into projects. And this is also something you gotta keep in mind. It's really nice to know this. Like, having all this information up front is going to really help inform your entire process. So it's just like, we're going to go through here and just detail out all the people that are kind of the key decision makers when it comes to, like, they're basically like the gatekeepers in a way. There's actually a couple layers of gatekeepers. There's these people which are the people that you want to directly get to the music to. And then there's people that are the pitchers, which are like kind of that they might actually be considered like the first gateway, because some places they won't even like listen to your music unless it comes from like somebody that they already trust, like a pitch person they already trust. But we're going to talk about the players first. These are the people who make the decisions, and the people who ultimately decide whether a song gets into a project or not. Number one, and I'm sure most everybody knows this on the call, since we've heard so much from Kathy already during the 5-day challenge and all that stuff, is music supervisors. So music supervisors, for anybody who doesn't know, their goal is basically to take with this project, they're going to work with the director to basically make a playlist for the movie, and scene by scene put music in that really enhances the project and elevates its effectiveness, and at the same time, like, keeps in mind all the budgeting things and all the legal stuff. So that's basically the goal of the music supervisor, is to make the movie, make the TV show as good as it can be within the budget that it has. So music wise, they have to manage those resources, and they have to basically scour all the different places that they know to grab certain types of music. So that's one of them. That's maybe arguably the most important types of decision makers in the sync industry, is music supervisors. 2, ad agencies. So agencies and the brands they serve, they hold a lot of power. So not all ad agencies have a music supervisor. So they may just be building ads as like a production team, and that's like a little different than like a traditional music supervisor coming onto a project and basically creating music for it. Sometimes ad agencies, they have internal teams that make music. Sometimes they go and they scour out, and once again, they'll reach out to the different people that they trust, all these different pitch people that they trust. Primarily is where they go first. And then if you can build potentially relationships directly to some of these agencies if you really have what it is that they need. So that's another one, ad agencies, number 2. Number 3 is the networks and their production companies. So these production companies, a lot of them will have music supervisors on board with the different projects that they're doing, but it's just good to keep in mind that, like, at the end of the day, it's their project. And sometimes these production companies will pull certain types of music from different music libraries that they either have a vested interest in, or they have like really strong ties and they know they can get the stuff from it. So in a way, they don't necessarily work with a music supervisor every single time, but the music supervisor might also be informed by some of the decisions that the network has made in terms of their business agreements with different libraries and different companies that pitch the music. So it's a good thing to keep in mind. Specific TV shows is a good thing to keep in mind. I think the whole thing with like considering them a player is that there's, depending on the brands of the TV shows that they make, there might be a certain type of music that you would make for a certain network, and so on and so forth. The next thing is trailer houses. So all those trailers that are made, they're typically cut inside trailer houses. And so they work a lot with composers that specialize in trailerizing music. They will often work with, if you can create stuff that sounds trailerized, they can often work with you. But it's usually they want something that's like really ready to go. So in those cases, they're really working on, and they're working on super fast deadlines. That's the other thing to know about trailer houses is a lot of times they have such short deadlines. They can't really work with you a lot of the time on something. So that's why you got to really like have it ready to go when they need it. So because they already have, like, you got to know with trailer houses in particular, they already have, pretty much every trailer house has like a team of like several producers, if not more, that they can call up on the phone. It's kind of like the high fields where they can turn around something like in 4 hours. It's like some of these folks can, like, they'll be like, hey, I got a thing that I need by tomorrow. Can you give it to me? And they're like, yep, I got it. And then because that relationship's established and they know they're going to deliver on it, those things work a lot of the times, but it doesn't mean that they aren't constantly taking music from different agencies, from different pitching agents. And if you build a relationship directly with the trailer house, it may be possible, but a lot of them do have the gateway, and the gateway can tend to be like the pitch company that has the relationship that's already established with the trailer house. And then finally, the video game companies, which, it's another place that you can pitch music to. And typically they might have their own internal composing teams, but they will have, for example, Activision's head of music. He was at Sync Keepers, and he was talking to us about how they do scout. They go out and they look for music. A lot of the music is like popular songs that they want to clear, but sometimes they can't get the popular song, and they look for something that's like just has this theme, or it just like really has this feel like instrumentally that they want for a game that they're working on. So that's another one of the big players. So those are the main players you're talking about in terms of the people that decide what music gets into projects. They're the main stakeholders for these projects. And then finally, I want to go over the people who pitch. So, and this is maybe the most important thing in terms of like immediate relevancy to like getting your stuff onto a placement, to getting a placement is like having people who have already trusted relationships with these different players in these places, the people who hold the keys and decide what gets placed, to have an in with them, especially when it's like, there's so much noise that's constantly getting thrown their direction. They don't even have the time to comprehend it all. That's why like having good relationships with pitch people is really important. It can really help you a lot. Not to say you can't pitch yourself. You might be the best pitcher of your own music, you know, who's to say? But I do know for a fact that like a lot of the major places won't listen to anything unsolicited. And some of the minor places won't as well, but doesn't mean you can't try. I think Kathy would be the first person to say that it doesn't hurt to try sometimes. You just gotta, it's part of the whole etiquette of it all, which we'll be covering in great detail further down the line, in terms of like strategy on how to market what it is you've created and how to go about like building authentic relationships with the people that could potentially change your life and the music that you have that could potentially change the lives of other people. So it really is a beautiful thing when it all like kind of lines up. And it's possible for anybody in this class, you know, if you create the right kind of music that people need and you go about it the right way, go about it the smart way, you're going to probably find some yeses out there for the music that you have. That's my experience with it anyways. So let's get into the pitchers. So the pitchers, the people who pitch music, want to start off number one with like the big sync agencies. We're talking places like Position, Zinc, Secret Road. I'm not going to go in and name a ton of names of any of these, but like I just wanted to throw those out there. Those are a few like the big names. There's a bunch more huge ones too. But these are really tough to get into. Almost impossible to get into without some sort of in. They don't take unsolicited submissions at all for the most part. This is where like just having really, really good music that they want, and maybe if you have a brand that has something going already that you can add to the obvious like great thing that they have going already. Like these brands represent some of the biggest names in entertainment, some of the biggest names in music, and to be in that club, you gotta have something that really steps up to the plate and delivers. So I don't want to discourage anybody from ever approaching any of these places. If you have music that is competitive with what they have on their roster, or maybe you have like a wrinkle that's like a little different, that they might really need, then you know there might be some way for you to get an introduction to somebody who could see if they like your stuff. They're out there. You know, there's producers who have relationships with certain agencies. You can definitely, that's one way to go about it, is like work with producers who have relationships with a specific agency. But yeah. And once again, we're not going to go in depth with any of this on like specific strategies for different places, because this is just to get you familiar with all the places that you could send your music to when you have something that's like really ready. But I want to give you an overview of everything. So then like, you're not like, what am I doing with this music when I'm done with it? Like we're setting the table for you right now so that you can know, kind of get an idea and kind of set the target. What could I shoot for realistically? To set myself up in a really good position to succeed with this. So next, I want to talk about boutique agencies. So boutique agencies are smaller agencies like Catch the Moon. There's a number of them. I know like probably a dozen of them off the top of my head. I'm not going to name like names. It's just like, because then you go down the rabbit hole of like talking about this company or that company, and for various legal reasons, I can't even talk about the competition with you all. But we will go into more depth with that kind of stuff later on. But these are agencies that they tend to have like a smaller roster size. When I say roster size, it's like the number of artists, and theoretically the larger the roster size, the larger potentially the number of songs they have to represent. And they probably have much more staff to kind of know what kinds of music go where and what. Smaller agencies, it's like a smaller roster, smaller number of songs, and they tend to have like a smaller team that goes about like making the decisions on things. There's advantages to working with larger agencies. There's advantages to working with smaller agencies. Sometimes and Kathy's probably spoken to this before, but some of the bigger agencies, it can actually like not necessarily be a good thing for your career because you might not get much action. You might not get much attention when you have like A-list music talent that's on their roster already and is probably demanding a ton of attention. So you've got to be careful with these kinds of things, but smaller agencies can definitely tend to give you more attention. They can tend to pitch your stuff more often. If the music that you have is like stuff that's needed. Some of that can like ebb and flow depending upon like what season it is or what kinds of placements the agency tends to land more of. For example, Catch the Moon we tend to land more stuff in ads than TV and film, but we also land a ton of stuff in TV and film as well. So, but there's going to be different things that some agencies do well, and that's something that's good to research and make your own conclusions about, and then just start when you have the music that they want. You can even do like preliminary research and see if there's anything they need if you want. There's nothing, I just thought about that. There's no reason why you couldn't try to hit them up and say, if there's like an agency that you really like the music they make, there's no reason why you couldn't hit them up, or just like check out, a lot of them have samplers. This is like a really good tip for anybody who wants to maybe kind of get a hint on like what kinds of music, different boutique agencies represent. You can get this information from like larger agencies too, but, I like, it's actually like really good ear training to go to the different agencies and just check out their samplers. Some of them have like direct links to their samplers that are from their homepage. You can literally just listen to the music that they represent, listen to their playlist, get a feel for like what kinds of music they like. And there could be a chance that if you make similar music that they might like it too. There's also always the chance that like if you make something that's exactly the same as what they already have, you don't want to cannibalize too much either. Like with the agencies definitely don't want to do that, because then there might not be enough to go around. If you have like, if you have like 20 indie rock bands and you've got like 60 singer-songwriters on your roster, you're probably going to be want to add like indie rock bands to your roster than singer-songwriters, because you've already got a ton of singer-songwriters. So that's another like little wrinkle on boutiques that's interesting. Yeah, but I don't want to get stuck up on too much on one thing here, because I want to leave enough time here so we can maybe answer some questions, do some more team check-ins here. We're almost through this. So the next thing in the list of like people who pitch things, music production libraries. So some music production libraries pitch things directly, and in a way they act as sync agencies, but a lot of the production libraries are basically just places that people go and they know that they can trust, that they can easily clear music. Sometimes it's at a cheaper cost. Sometimes it's not at a cheaper cost. It's just like a good reputable library that they can get stuff from. And it's basically like, it's different than a sync agency in that you basically send the songs over and they become part of their library, which is easily searchable by people like music supervisors, ad agencies, if they just like have an internal person who's looking for a specific type of music, but they're not a supervisor. It's just a place where like, and literally like if somebody wanted music for like their wedding video or something like that, theoretically, some libraries are a little more closed off and it's like more specializing and it's more money. But some other music libraries, some of the smaller, like non-exclusive ones, they'll cater to anybody, including people who just want to pay like $50 or $75 for a track to put their wedding video to, which, it might not seem like a lot of money, but I would say don't turn your nose up to get it. Cause like, once again, it's like, what's your model? If your model is you want to get a ton of large placements, that's kind of tough to do, but you might find more success if you try to target like, certain music libraries and really crushing it there, because there's definitely some big money that can be made in certain music production libraries if you make the right kind of music. Once again, it all goes back to research. You have to make music that they need. A lot of the music production libraries will literally send out emails saying exactly what it is that's hot right now, what they need. And you can build good relationships with them. Once you get in with a couple of them, it might actually help you get leverage to get into more of them. But it just all goes back to like, you just start building relationships with folks in this industry. And then you'll find, at least I've found in my own navigating of the industry, that like one thing will kind of lead to another thing, will lead to another thing. And then you just kind of say yes to the doors that open up when they seem to make sense to. We had somebody on not too long ago. She's great. Her name's Christina Benson. She works for an agency, and she said that that's like how she got into the position that she's in right now, which is like just basically saying yes to the doors that open. I think that's a really good attitude to take with all this. And it's really good to have an open mind for this too, because there's no, just as like, you don't necessarily know what you might be the best at making music wise, you don't know for sure like what might be the best place for you to market your music when you're done with it. So I think like to think about both of those things when you're first trying to figure out what you're targeting is just so crucial. So I think as you go through this exercise and the assignment that we're going to do this week, it's just going to help continue to crystallize like what it is, what's the goal, what you're going to set out to do. And I think it's just really going to help you out. Next, I want to talk about individual pitching agents. So there are agencies, there's big ones, there's boutique ones, there's also individual pitch people. I have relationships with several kind of independent pitch. They're just independent pitch folks. So they don't really, I have a couple of them where they don't even really like have what's called a Schedule A with them. So a Schedule A is a good term to know. For example, in Catch the Moon, we do have some artists that are on a Schedule A. We have a ton of songs that are also on single song agreements, but a Schedule A basically means like you sign an agreement with an agency or a company, basically like a pitch company. And what that means is these are the Schedule A is the songs that are on their roster of yours. So this is like, instead of having like a separate agreement for every single song, you would have one agreement that can be added to over the course of the main agreement that you've signed with them. That's your Schedule A. So a lot of individual people might not even have a Schedule A. They're just like, you got anything like this? It could be like more informal. Some of them have Schedule A's that they add your stuff to. And yeah, it's like, but like the individual people, they can be kind of nimble. They might have relationships to certain projects that could be advantageous. There's so many different angles with companies and pitch people. I think you'll find that once you get into it and you start to get to know people, you'll find that there's no formula to it. For example, like I know somebody who's he's like a video editor. So he edits TV shows, but he also places the music on them. He's the music supervisor and he's also a composer. So it's like he serves like 3 roles on in like one company, and it's actually a really good situation. It's like, but there's all kinds of situations out there that you can go out and find, and everybody's going to have their own thing. But individual pitch people, there's some people that have their own special relationships to certain projects. They might be connected to directors or producers or video editors, who knows. Or music supervisors, they might have their own little pool of music supervisors that they know that are looking for things, and they hit them up for stuff because they trust them. But once again, it's like, this is somebody that might have a foot in the door that you don't have already, that it might be advantageous for you to maybe work with if the terms seem good. Then the last thing I wanted to mention, because they are out there, is kind of pitch services like Taxi and Songtradr, stuff like that. I know some people who have done well with Taxi, at least in terms of like building connections. I don't know a ton of people who have gotten a ton of placements on Taxi, but I do know, I have one friend in particular who really, like, his whole career kind of launched off of Taxi, just based off the contacts that he ended up building through different submissions. But he's been in the game for like 15 years. So I don't know, a lot's probably changed since then, but in a way, like, things haven't changed either. Because, you know, at the end of the day, if you have the goods, this is just one way for you to get the goods to the people who need it. Same thing with SoundTrader. You know, I literally, if I haven't gotten 2 placements through SoundTrader, I've actually never had a SoundTrader account, but I've gotten a couple of placements through other people who have set up accounts and submitted for stuff. So these are, once again, these are services that you have to pay for, and you pay for submissions. I don't advocate that anybody pays to have their stuff pitched. I feel like Kathy, I'm pretty sure Kathy said the same thing already. I'm pretty sure she feels the same way. You should never have to pay somebody to pitch your stuff, but these services are out there, and you know, Taxi is great to learn. It's like, it's in some ways they do some of the same stuff we do in terms of teaching, and like helping inform you and helping kind of guide and mold you to making music that is marketable. And they have a great conference. If you haven't checked out their conference, they have a cool conference that happens every November. So this, by no means am I trash talking Taxi or SoundTrader at all. Just not like what I would ever pay money for. I just feel like it's you shouldn't, if you have good music, there are people that will pitch it and they're not going to ask you to pay them to do so. That's my experience with things. All right, so that's pretty much all that we're covering for this week in terms of like the content. So you know, now you really know like where are the places you can get your stuff placed, who are the people who make the decisions, and who are the people that can help you get your music to the decision makers. So that's like the whole goal of this week, was to get you familiarized with that. And then the next thing I want to talk about is your assignment for this week. So for this week, we want to build upon the homework that you did last week. So what we want to do is find, with this music that you've gotten really excited about, this direction that you're like, I think I could do this. What I want you to do is find 3 more relevant references that are in the same ballpark as that song that you picked. So these songs don't all have to have placements. I would suggest that they be songs that have been produced in the last couple of years. But if for some reason they're a little older, maybe a couple years older, and they're in the same ballpark, they have the same vibe, they have the same feel. Maybe it's a song that has like a vintage feel, and there's a song from like 5 or 6 years ago that, or maybe a little bit longer than that really feels like it's in the same bucket, then that's cool. But the whole idea is they all have to be really cool songs, and then the ballpark to the reference you picked out last week. And if you decide for whatever reason you'd like to change up the directions with it, if you decide for, you know, this week you're like, oh, I don't really want to do what I did last week, that's totally cool. Just make sure that one of the songs that are in your 4 songs are really solid references, in that they're from the last couple years, and they've had a placement in the last couple years. That's like the only requirement. So that's your assignment for this week. The next thing is, so there's 2 parts to the assignment. That's the first part of the assignment. The second part of the assignment, and this is where like the magic of these groups and the magic of the Facebook group is really going to come in handy, because you can all do research and you can all help each other find places. This might be an obvious answer depending upon like what kind of music your references are, what songs your 4 songs are like. But the goal is like to find 3 angles that you could potentially market your music in. For example, and I kind of referred to this earlier, if you make catchy, fun, upbeat, modern indie rock, maybe like targeting an ad agency would be a good idea. Yeah, like basic, or the pitch people that serve ad agencies. So there's a couple different layers you can try to target directly, and kind of think, well, what agencies or brands or types of TV shows, like specific TV shows, would I maybe want to put my stuff on? And then thinking like, you got to think like, so you've got that up there, you got to think the layer below that, who's the person who pulled the trigger on making the decision to put that there? And then you got to think below that, how did that person get the song? So in a way, like we're helping you set up like, so that you know, like, so you can potentially have it in your mind. Okay, so for me to get my song here, I might need to go to this person, which I can get them the music from this agency or this person. So just starting to think on those lines, what are 3 angles that you could take with these songs that you've selected? And so then, yeah, the only angle you're not allowed to select is targeting Catch the Moon music. Because like, and in all fairness, we're going to be listening to so much of your music, and we're going to be listening to tons of submissions. You're going to have your opportunity to pitch your music to us for sure. But like for this initial assignment, I don't want that one of those angles to be Catch the Moon music. You have to think outside of that, whether it be like individual pitch people or boutique agencies or pitch services. I wouldn't do pitch services, but like, just think of music production libraries. Just start to do some research. You might find one angle of those three that looks really promising, and then you can, you'll already have that seed planted ahead of time. Okay, so this might be a marketable approach that I can take with this music. So that's the whole point. That's it. Basically, so to recap, find 3 more relevant references in the ballpark of the initial reference that you found last week that you're really excited about, that's totally relevant to modern licensing, and then find 3 angles that you could take to get the music that you are making into a placement, like basically into a show, into an ad, into a video game, into a podcast, in retail stores. Like, try to like figure out 3 different trajectories you could take with it. And I think you'll find a lot of, you'll really like, you'll come up with a ton of resources. Who knows, maybe you all will want to put together some type of directory that like kind of puts together all the common findings that you have, which could be a cool resource for everybody. Just want to throw that out there. I know some groups in the past have done something similar to that. So that's your assignment for this week. And I want to open things up. We're gonna open things up here for a little bit for if anybody has any questions regarding what I went through or the assignment. And then we might check in with a couple of the groups before we end the call. Just because it's like, it was so fun to hear how things are going with everybody so far. Does anybody have a question? Let's see. I'm looking in the chat. Do production libraries take vocals? Lance asked if production libraries take vocals. That's a great question. Some music production libraries focus mostly on instrumentals. They might have like a lot of stuff that's instrumental, and then they'll have different cut downs. It depends on what kinds of music you're making too. If you're making stuff that's cues and things like that, you would want like 15 and 30-second cut downs and things like that. Some with vocals, some without vocals. It really just depends. Some music production libraries prefer to work in like building relationships with specific producing teams or writers that put together like albums that are themed, and then they'll pitch them to music. These are some of like the higher end music production libraries, like your Warner Chappell kind of situations, where you'll have to like pitch concepts for albums, and then like if they like it, then they'll give you the green light, and they'll maybe even pay you a demo fee if they approve it at the end. And then you have an agreement with them that you'll get back end royalties on it when they use it in their projects, which can be they're going to be a lucrative aspect to that. It's just like building those contacts and building those relationships can be tough at first. But as with anything, you got to get your foot in the door somehow and just like really prove yourself, make good music. And then, but I know that music that has vocals and instrumentals are both used. Got a question here from Michelle Rivers. Is there an ad agency or pitch agency that focus on a specific genre like Americana? I'm sure, I don't know any off the top of my head that focus in Americana, but I know pretty much every single sync agency that I've seen has Americana of some sort, like modern Americana, not like bluegrass from the 70s Americana, but like 70s folk music or something like that. It's like modern Americana. There's definitely a market out there for it, and a lot of agencies love it, and it gets used. So yeah, the answer is like, I can't think of any specific ones. And like I said, I'm not gonna, throughout the course of this, if I mention a specific agency or a specific person, it's not because we're like advocating them or anything like that. And we actually like try to steer clear of that, because we want to make sure that like, everybody's going to have their own experience with different places, and we don't want to color, anybody's business relationship with any of these agencies. Let's see. If we sign a deal with a licensing agency, so Nicholas asked this, if we sign a deal with a licensing agency for our EP, does that mean we can't pitch them with another agency? This is a great question. So the answer to that question is, it depends on if the deal is exclusive or non-exclusive. So there are typically 2 types of pitch deals. One deal is exclusive, and that just means that they are the sole people that can pitch the stuff. So I had an exclusive deal with an agency for a couple of years, and they did some good work for me. But I could not, they were basically, the buck stopped with them whenever a placement came in, whether I hunted for it or they did. So ultimately, they are the ones who decide whether it gets approved or not, whether we decide to go forward. The agency that I was working with was cool with like fairly low dollar amounts, so it was never a situation where I had a placement kind of in line and they were like, we won't do it. We can't agree to it. But there are some situations where, you know, especially the higher up you get, there are definitely A-list music. There's A-list artists and agencies that turn down like hundreds of thousands of dollar placements because it's undervalued for what it's under their perceived value for things. So, so yeah, the exclusive deals are out there. There are pros and cons for exclusive versus non-exclusive. Exclusive deals, you are basically giving them the eggs in the basket. And so theoretically they should be like really pitching your stuff and really giving you some attention and going out and getting stuff for you. So that's like my take on like exclusive versus non-exclusive. At least on the exclusive side, it's got to really be enticing. They've really got to be into your stuff. Otherwise, it's really not going to be worth it for you. And then if it's a non-exclusive deal, then you're free to pitch it wherever you want. The only thing that can come up sometimes is if you have your EP signed with like 5 or 6 different agencies that are non-exclusive. What can happen is you might have your song pitched by like 2 or 3 agencies to the same opportunity. And then if it gets used, there can be like some tug of war, fist fight kind of, it's all polite. I mean, it's for the most part, but it can definitely lead to some confusion. And I would say like, if you're doing non-exclusive stuff, to just be careful about it. Because if you spread it around to too many places, it's not really going to seriously damage your reputation, but I don't think it's going to look good. If I just know I wouldn't want somebody finding out that my stuff is repped by like 6 different places and they're all getting pitched to the same thing. But who knows, maybe it'll help them, like the people who make decisions, see your song more often or something like that. I don't know. There's probably no formula with it. But I personally don't like have my stuff represented by more than a couple agencies at a time. Like, but I have like so many different parts of my library that I send out for different stuff. I have some of my songs that are in exclusive deals. That's another thing you can do. You can make one EP and make it exclusive here, and then just kind of forget about it, and then you just go about making music. And then you can reevaluate that deal there. Oh, another thing with exclusive deals, you want to make sure that the term of the exclusive deal is not too long. Because that can suck if the term of your deal is, because like, for example, like a 3-year deal, a 3-year exclusive deal, 3 years is a long time in the industry. So by the time you get out of the deal, your stuff probably won't sound, especially if it was something that was modern and fresh when you signed it. It's like, it's probably not going to sound as modern and fresh anymore. And you may have missed your window. So that's just one thing to keep in mind, when it's actually a pretty long conversation about that. It's a great question. Let's see. So we got one here from Kristen Allen. When a listing on Taxi, for instance, says you need the rights to your master songwriting share, do you need proof of the copyright? Or is it simply showing that you are the owner of your track, assuming your one stop is proof that you've had your track mastered enough to pitch? So the answer to this question is, you need the rights to your master song. Do you need a proof? So you don't need copyright proof. And I apologize. Anybody who's unmuted, could you please mute yourself? I will be calling on people a little later, but for right now, please. So to answer the question, if you don't really need copyright in order to pitch your stuff. Nobody ever asks for copyright. There might be some limited situations where they're really concerned about that. The main thing the thing that they're most concerned with is, do you actually own the rights to the master? And can you speak authoritatively, meaning like one stop, to all the rights holders of the song? So you have to have all the splits clear, your writing, your publishing, your master. You have to have all that stuff clear. And have like an understanding and have like everybody's information regarding that. If you have multiple stakeholders on your song, and that's the main thing that they're concerned with. is making sure that your stuff is, and also that it's just like it's your work, it's original work. Yeah, and it doesn't have like, it's free from like samples, like blatant samples that can be kind of problematic. So yeah, it's simply, and I want to make sure that the second half of the question answered, or simply showing you are an owner of your track. Yeah, mastering has nothing to do with it either. But yeah, the master is different than like mastering as a process when producing stuff. So, and we'll definitely go into production stuff in detail. We're actually going to have like a week where we go into mixing and mastering, which is going to be really, really helpful, I think, to everybody. So we're gonna talk about that later on. These are great questions, by the way. I love all these questions. For the assignment, can all four tracks be by the same artist? Absolutely. Yes. The answer is yes. If they're all like, actually, it's not a bad thing necessarily. If that artist is like really hot and they're doing really good things, chances are they're gonna want like different flavors of the music. I remember when Black Keys was really, really, really crazy. I mean, they still get stuff, and knockoffs still get stuff all the time. But I would say that probably wouldn't be a good direction to go right now, just because there's so much of it. You got to consider this too. Like, and I do want to talk about this for a second. That you kind of got to think about like the trends and where things are going. So picking something that's like kind of been around for a while as a strategy might not be the best thing. For example, like if you decided you wanted to make a bunch of Black Keys kind of sounding music, I might not suggest that, because there's already such saturation of that kind of music that's not only been created by the Black Keys and artist bands that are trying to kind of knock them off a little bit, but also all the people, imagine like all the people that are gunning for syncs and the different companies that are doing this stuff have knocked out like albums and albums and albums of this stuff. So it's like, you might want to consider a different strategy. But you know, who's to say? There might be a place that you can market that stuff pretty effectively. So, but that'd be just my 2 cents on that. I just went off on a little tangent there. Let's see. Can you still sell your EP on iTunes even though it's licensed exclusively? So the license isn't exclusive. It's your agreement with them to pitch your music as exclusive. And that usually doesn't have any bearing on whether you can release a song as an artist or not. Most agencies like having artists that are cool and have a following and it's part of like the value that they can deliver to their clients. So when they're pitching stuff, sometimes briefs are asking for like up and coming artists, maybe in the LA area, maybe, I mean, I saw one today where they were looking for somebody who's up and coming in like Australia. You know, it's just like, that's like, it's definitely one of those things that you can bring to the table that will help out. So most brands, most agencies don't care about that. They don't really have any language that pertains to that when it comes to deals. Sometimes it's better to have your stuff unreleased for certain types of tracks, but I would say if you're an artist and the music that you're going to be creating is highly marketable, but it's in your artist brand, then there's no reason why you shouldn't release the music and hype it up and get it into Spotify playlists and do everything you can to promote it, make a video. You know, I think the rules apply there in terms of like just being yourself, being an artist. It'll help you. Are sync agencies and publishing companies the same thing? They really, so there's some blurring that happens with that. Some sync agencies also administer publishing, or they have publishing deals with the people that they represent. So Catch the Moon, for example, we don't take any publishing at all. We don't admin publishing. We don't take any publishing. We just take a cut of the master. So that means if you get a placement through us, we basically give you all the publishing side of it, and we just take a cut of the master sync fee. So, but that's different. There's many agencies out there. I know there's quite a few of them. There's some that even retitle. They'll retitle your songs, and so they basically, if they'll own the publishing, like pretty much in perpetuity, which might sound awful, but I will say this, that there's all kinds of companies out there, all kinds of deals. And if they can get you like regular work where you're getting paid for it, it's like, but they keep your publishing. It's like, well, you know, giving up your publishing, but getting paid every year for a song that otherwise would be sitting around is not necessarily a bad thing. So just because you hear sometimes about like publishing, you don't ever want to give your publishing away. I don't agree with that. But that's just me. I think it really just depends on, like, because there's all different kinds of business models that companies run. You got to remember, all these agencies, they're businesses. So, and the people that are placing the songs are businesses. So they're all making decisions that are in their best interests. And then what we do as music creators and as music professionals is we go out and we make the best deals with these pitch people and these companies, if we have direct relationships with them, that work with our business model. So it's like a kind of like two aspects to it. So they might offer their deal, but it doesn't mean you have to take it, and you can negotiate sometimes. It depends. Sometimes the wiggle room can be pretty minimal. But so it's publishing like song sales, money made from streams, money made off the song, excluding the ad or TV placement. So publishing is an aspect of the rights that you have, that a song has. Like, it's basically like it's one of the legal entities of a song. So there's publishing, there's writing, and there's master. Like that's the simplest way I can describe it. It really doesn't have anything to do with like streaming royalties from like Spotify. There's different types of royalties where certain legal aspects of a song factor in. Stuff like Spotify, I think that's like mechanical royalties, which is kind of similar to the way it was with like CDs and cassettes and records and stuff like that. It's a different type of royalty that comes in that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the publishing of it. But I'm not an expert at that. But I think collectively together we can answer any question that you have about that. It's just I'm not like the authoritative. I know quite a few things, but I'm not the authoritative expert when it comes to all the legal nuances of music business deals. And part of the reason for that is that the music industry, in terms of like understanding the various legal aspects and what types of royalties, there's like 14 different types of royalties, I've been told. It's very convoluted and confusing. And together, though, we will do the best to help you understand like kind of the most important parts of all this. So you don't need to understand every single part of it, but we'll teach you like the most important parts that you definitely need to know. Caroline Moore. So I saw a licensing contract and it said that the company reserves the right to change and use the masters they need to. I think this would be like if they want to like speed it up or slow it down, it's like you kind of need to give them the leeway to do this kind of stuff sometimes. But I would probably, if I was concerned about that, I would just kind of ask what they would typically use that for. I think that's what they would, that's kind of like recontextualizing. They might need to do that every once in a while. They might need to add something to the track. I believe that's what that references. Hey, and for everybody who can't stick around for the entire call, I see some people popping off. I just wanted to say thanks for hanging out with us tonight. And yeah, it's just been, I've been so excited about this class. It's been just really great to see everybody so far, how much everybody's growing. Is there a market for original piano instrumental music in sync? I think it depends on, there's definitely a market for instrumental music. It really just depends on what type of instrumental music you're talking about. Yeah, there's certainly a place for piano music. You have to find the uses, is what I would suggest, is like find the songs, find the uses, and kind of go from there. There's a lot of instrumental music that gets used in TV and film and TV shows. Oh, TV. I think I said the same thing twice. Sorry. When you talk for like an hour straight, that can happen. You just kind of start talking like the Micro Machines guy. I don't talk that fast though. How about hard rock and punk music? Yeah, I mean, I think there's flavors of all this kind of stuff, but it's a modern flavor of it. Like hard rock in like the 80s kind of style or like 90s style, probably not, but like hard rock and punk rock, like modern hard rock and punk rock music, absolutely. And you got to find modern for whatever genre you've made music in the past. I don't know how dated your approach to things are, but everybody has to be like really concerned with just making sure that their stuff has the modern signatures of the genre. So, and the way that you get familiarized with that, and this is part of ear training, we'll be getting into more of this later, is like literally just start going on to like the modern playlists that are on Spotify, for example. You can find like modern playlists for pretty much any genre of music. But just make sure it's like a modern kind of top hits of today in the genre. And if you listen for like, you start listening to that for like a month, you're going to get a real good feel for like what like super cool modern punk stuff sounds like. You're going to get a really good feel for what super cool modern Americana sounds like. No matter what genre it is you're trying to make, like you're going to get a feel for that. But you gotta put the time in, you got to get the ear training. Podcast paper song, I don't think it works that way. I think they do like some sort of blanket license, but I'm not an expert at that. We'll definitely be getting more information about that as things go along, because we're actually in the process as an agency of going out and like making some more contacts in that direction. We already have a good one, but we're going to be looking to get more information on that as well, because we see it as a place that there's an opportunity. Is there a place to find music that's placed in podcasts? You just listen to podcasts. I would say like if you listen to podcasts, you can hear the kinds of music they use. It's all kinds of music. And yeah, I could think about that and see if there's any place that just really like strikes me as a place that you could quickly find the types of music that's used in podcasts. But I think it's like, you got to just listen to a bunch of them. Let's see. What do we got? What other questions we got? Okay, here's another one. Christina, how does it work if they rename your tracks? Does this mean you can't pitch your original tracks? And wouldn't that create copyright infringement problems for SoundScan for the agency library that renamed the track? Would the renamed track directly take away from your original track's residue? So the whole thing with retitling, I don't have a ton of experience with like people retitling my stuff. Actually, CD Baby does this. It was kind of annoying. It was one of the reasons why I stopped using CD Baby was because I think it was because like I opted into like them collecting money off of YouTube. They basically retitle your stuff and then they collect all the publishing for that, and then they give you a cut of that is kind of their model. But they basically want to handle all the publishing, and the way they do that is by retitling the song just specifically for the publishing, not for the writing. It doesn't factor into the writing at all. I think it just only factors into the publishing of it. To my knowledge, that's mainly why they do it. Yeah, and as far as copyrights, I mean, I don't really. I've copyrighted one album of mine. I've got about 200 songs in my library, and I've copyrighted probably about 12 of those songs. And I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but it's certainly like money that you could spend in other directions. And it does take a little bit of effort to copyright your stuff. I'm just not that concerned about it personally. But I might have a case in the future that changes my mind about that. I don't know too many people who are really obsessed about the copyright angle with songs. Have you ever turned down a sync because of your own values and beliefs? I've never had a placement where it was like I couldn't deal with like the political ramifications of it, or like, yeah, it's never come up for me. I suppose like anybody who is kind of anti-corporate, like might have a hard time taking money from like a company like Walmart or McDonald's, but at the same time, it's like we're trying to make a living here, and it's for me, I see it as like, it's like, would I rather be making money as a music professional and being able to have the freedom to live the awesome life that I live, and also be able to create music on the side, create whatever kind of stuff I want to make. Like I'm making this kids project where it's like, there's no budget for it. I'm just doing it out of my own love, like making it like this jazz kids album. It's going to be so fun. It's called Mermaid Pirate. And it's like, I can do that because like I have the freedom to be able to do it. And I can do it because I want to do it out of my own heart. And but I wouldn't necessarily be able to do that if I couldn't pay my bills. And so at the end of the day, there's the moral aspect to it. Do I think that there's a potential in the future for something like that to come up? Sure. I'm sure there might be a company where I'm like, I really don't like this company for whatever reason, and I just can't do it. But you know, it hasn't happened to me yet. And I don't think it's like something that happens a lot. I think you'd be surprised to hear how at least like with like the people who aren't like A-list type celebrity, you know, musicians and artists and things like that. That's more like where, because as like a big high profile artist, you have to kind of decide how you want your artist brand to merge with the commercial world. And so it's interesting. You got somebody like Bob Dylan who's like about as anti-establishment in some of the songs as possible, and then you've got, I mean, literally like got his songs playing in like some of the biggest companies in the world, and it's there's a lot of money involved in it. And so I think, you know, some people might have, you know, certain views, but they still decide, hey, I want to make sure my kids have their future taken care of. Or I think it's a decision that everybody has to make for themselves. And I know for a fact that people turn down stuff, but usually not at like the kind of the level that like independent creators that aren't like huge celebrities are dealing with. Let's see. Brittany's, let's see. Do you have relationships with some direct pitchers? How much do they charge? So pitchers don't, like I was saying before, I don't think you ever want to put yourself in a position where you're paying to have somebody pitch your music. Anybody who says they can pitch your music for a cost, I would be very, very wary of. Borderline, like, sounds super shady. I just don't think it's a good model. I think that the people who charge for something like that would be people who are trying to get they're trying to start their own business, and they're part of the reason they're not getting enough. I don't know why they would do that. Like, I think maybe for a company like SoundTrader and Taxi, they have a pretty large overhead that they got to pay or something like that. So they're just like, I don't think either one of those companies operate as nonprofits. I'm sure they're both profitable companies, but I think, like, you know, smaller folks, pitch people might approach you and say like, yeah, if you pay me like whatever amount every month, I'll pitch your stuff. That just sounds shady to me. I would venture to say that the contacts that person has probably aren't worth paying for. And if you really had the goods that they could do something with, that they would be stupid not to rep your stuff for free anyways. Because it would basically be like a slam dunk for them. So I would really strongly suggest not paying somebody to pitch your music. I think I haven't heard good things from anybody about that. How much do the ones you have relationships? What percent of sync fee? So this fluctuates greatly, and you're gonna hear all kinds of figures that are thrown out. You know, everything from taking 100% of your publishing and a portion of the master to, like, you know, no publishing and very, very artist friendly deal like we have at Catch the Moon, where it's like we take 35%, and it's like it's very artist friendly deal. But then you have everything in between. So it's really, there's no one thing. Some companies take 50% of the master, but they don't touch your publishing. I think it really fluctuates. I had a deal once where it was 40 and it was just for the master. So yeah, it's really all over the place. And we'll talk more about this stuff later. Let's see. Brittany Davis. Hey, John, I was recently told that I'm not eligible to say I co-produced one of my songs, even though I brought in a recording of me playing on my keyboard exactly how I wanted the piano part to sound. Okay, the producer mimicked the exact same notes and style I played it in, and it ended up on the final track. I also gave direction a lot of the instrumentation, but wasn't actually playing the instruments or physically making the beat. This all goes back. Actually, have a good friend of mine who had a situation that came up with that was very similar to this, and it was actually like really upsetting to her because these producers came back to her and were asking for points. This really isn't like a sync related thing, but it's like it just, what ended up happening is like she was like releasing the track like this week or something like that, and they approached her like 2 weeks ago about like getting points on the deal when that was never part of the agreement. It all goes back to like, what is the original deal? And that's where like you have a lot of power in this thing, and it's really smart as an artist, as like somebody who creates music professionally, to make sure that all your legal ducks are in a row. Try to sign a split sheet. Any proof that you have in writing as to like how everything's done. A production agreement will really clear up a lot of this stuff. If you were intending to be a co-producer on this, and you feel like your contributions elevate to that level, that's something that probably should have been like talked about like before you even started recording. And then you would like basically enter negotiations kind of knowing, okay, yeah. But if it was something that wasn't like spoken about, I can see it sounds like a tough situation, you know, where there's like no easy answer. And you might have to negotiate with this person, about that. You know, it sounds like a tough thing. Some of the things you're talking about definitely sound like it lifts to the level of producer. But you know, also I can't speak too much to it because I wasn't there. And some of this has to do with like, you know, just the whole like business dynamic of it. So that's why I'll preach to everybody, like just get really clear up front. I always, when I work with somebody, and I'll sometimes do this like even like halfway through the production to make sure everything's still cool with them. Especially if I feel like anything's kind of changed in any kind of way. I feel like I'm really good at communicating what's going on. We can always be really good at communicating, but it's also good to like I always make sure to have the upfront understanding before any of that. Because there's nothing worse than just kind of changing like the play like halfway through. You know, you imagine you're a quarterback of the team and you're down at the goal line and you're about to snap the football and like totally like to the surprise of everybody else, you just run a different play. It's like your teammates are going to be like, they're not going to block the right people. They're not going to run the right routes, and everybody's going to be upset at you. So it's like in the same way, it's some of that kind of stuff can kind of translate to, with that analogy, can kind of translate to making music, where if you aren't on the same page as to what play you're running and what the plan is, and have like a legal understanding of it, then it can cause problems. So I'm sorry to hear that you're going through that. Everybody goes through those kinds of situations, and the best way that I've learned to learn from them is just to do the best I can to be as clear as I can throughout the entire process and have stuff in writing. So yeah. So Jason, or Jason, I'm sorry, I don't know if I pronounced your name right. Should we focus on making more songs that are placeable or focus on honing our skills of pitching, finding places to pitch for us? So I think you should have the music first before. That's why it's like, I enjoy answering all these questions about like agencies and deals and everything like that, but that's not really the point. Like what good does knowing where to send music to do you if you don't have the goods? That's like probably like that's certainly putting the cart before the horse in a way. So it's way more important to get the right kind of music together that you can market. That's way more important. That's my opinion on that. Yeah. And Jesse, that's a good point. Copyright is implicit upon creation. You could even send yourself a copy of like stuff through the mail. There's different ways you can copyright it. All that officially registering with the Library of Congress does is it just kind of cements it a little further. But I just feel like it's a bit of an unnecessary step. But once again, I'm not a lawyer. I've been doing music for quite some time, and it's never been an issue for me, but it's a risk I've up until this point been willing to take. If we are not an up and coming artist with no following, does this affect who we should be targeting? Well, I think if you can make music that you could build a following around, you could certainly start to develop an artist image around something. It's never too late to create an artist brand. But yeah, I mean, I think it does sometimes affect because some agencies their roster might be full of like kind of up and coming cool indie, like for example, like indie rock bands or indie pop bands or electronic indie kind of pop stuff. And if that's the case, you know, if you don't have any following at all, it might be hard for you to crack in, but at the same time, they might just really like your stuff. If your stuff is really, really, really good, some doors are going to open for you. And I guarantee you, if your stuff is really, really good, I'm going to do whatever I can as the director of music at Catch the Moon to see that like some people that we have contacts with are able to hear your stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I think the quality focus should be like the first focus, but like, I feel that like whether you're an artist who has an image or an established brand or not is not like absolutely essential. but I'm saying it's helpful. It doesn't hurt your chances. Let's see. Michelle, how do we know if we have anything that's ready to pitch? Will that be something we'll have the opportunity to discuss? Like already ready to pitch? I've been doing this for a while. I'm not saying that like nobody has anything that's ready to pitch, but I would be surprised if a ton of people have stuff that's like really ready to pitch places. That's just like being like from my experience with these classes and just kind of like my experience with people who are new to like making music for licensing. But we will certainly have opportunities. I mean, as soon as like next month, we'll be focusing on songwriting. I think that would be a good opportunity to like share your stuff with the group, see what feedback. I'll be definitely chiming on. I've really mostly stayed away from like chiming in on like songwriting or people asking about like, what do you think of this song for this show or whatever, because I really don't feel like that should be the focus right now. Kathy doesn't either. It's like we really got to like set the goal in mind first, and then the next step to that is like getting the music like up to the right place from a songwriting perspective. So over the course of the next couple months, we'll certainly have lots of opportunities to listen to songs that you've already recorded and give you feedback on them. We're also in the office hours calls. We listen to stuff pretty frequently. So it depends on, sometimes the calls go a little shorter in terms of like just the questions that people have, so we can actually screen quite a few songs. We're never going to go through as many songs as we did the other night for the Samantha Hilscher thing, but we will tend to go through like a half a dozen songs every office hours typically. And yeah, so there'll be tons of opportunities to have your songs listened to, and we'll I hope one thing that you'll get from me is like the one thing I can promise you is that I'll just be do the best I can to be encouraging, but also honest with you about like where things are in terms of where they need to be. Cause like it doesn't do me any good to like tell you it's great and it's going to get a placement when I know it's not. And yeah, so it's like I said, it's going to surprise me, but maybe it won't surprise me because there are so many talented people in this group. But I know that there's a different mindset with this that like, I just know before I was like really zeroed in on all this stuff, the way I was making music was off in a way. It wasn't really hitting the mark. So not to say that there aren't people that are way ahead of the curve from where I was like 4 or 5 years ago. I'm sure there are. So, but we'll see. It'll be fun to see. Let's see, Lori, what about using different singers on the EP, but the genre is fairly focused? I would say like, yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. I really recommend that like, this would just be like, you can literally make your EP whatever you want, but I think what's probably going to be more marketable is having a collection of songs that kind of feel like they're in the same, like if you had like an EP, like an artist EP almost, it's like you have like one type of song, then the next song isn't like super jarring that it's like totally different. That's what I'm saying. So like, I think there are definitely bands that have like male and female singers and kind of blend that together. And I think you could certainly do that, but I just think the trick is going to be, how do you make them related enough that they feel like they can fit on like the same album? I think that's kind of what you want to think about, is like, do these songs kind of fit on the same album in a way? Because it's going to help you market your stuff. Let's see. My wife and I write some faith-based songs, and then others are more just songs about life and fun. Should we keep the two separate, as in not include songs that are explicitly faith-based in our EP, and maybe even create a separate brand for each? I think it's a good idea. I don't think anybody really like has any, at the end of the day, it's like people might have their religious beliefs, but at the end of the day, if it's a song they need, it's a song they need. But I think that there's certainly certain types of programming where they're looking for faith-based music. So I think that would be actually potentially a really good angle for you to pursue, is actually to see if I'm not even sure if there might be some licensing agencies that specialize in Christian music or, like faith-based music. That might be a good angle. And then you could do a couple different projects, one that's like, not religious themed, and then the other ones that has all the heartfelt feelings that you want to express, that also could potentially be really marketable and help like elevate shows that are looking to send out that message. So I think I think you could do both. Let's see. What length of songs tend to be the most signable? I think it's a tough question to ask. I think a lot of songs, I mean, songs get used. I mean, there's songs that get used that are like 15 seconds long. I mean, there's different cues. Depends on like what kinds of, if you're going to talking about music libraries, like you'd probably not submit a 15-second song to them. You'd probably submit the 15-second and then the 30-second cut down, 60-second, and then you'd have like a full version of it and a couple other flavors. But you also have songs that are like when you talk about lyric songs. I mean, for example, I'm working on a bunch of stuff right now. I'm working on a batch of songs for a pitch for a TV show with an in that I just have like with a producer friend of mine, not relating to Catch the Moon at all. But where a lot of the songs are like a minute and a half. They're like a verse, a chorus, and then like a post. That's pretty much all they are. Because the only thing that the person who's like doing the supervision needs, they only need like that much of it. And then we can like cover a bunch of different angles that way. So you don't necessarily need to have full songs in order to do this well. In fact, I might suggest like it might be better to have like a simpler arrangement than have like a full built out song, because then you don't have to worry about if you're creating something that's 2 minutes long, you don't have to worry about writing a bridge. You know, you don't have to, you can really focus on getting everything sounding as perfect as it can sound, like, and focus on the quality, not the quantity. I would say it'd be way better to have a 1.5-minute song that kicks ass versus having like a 4.5-minute song that's okay. That's my opinion on it. But there's no rule with it. Like all kinds of songs get used all different kinds of lengths. A post, Nicole, is so it's like a terminology. It's an arranging terminology in terms of like song structure. So you have like verses and choruses. A post is typically something that comes in after the chorus, but it's not quite the verse, not quite the second verse. So there'll be like a chorus, and then there'll be what a post is. It just kind of continues the chorus in a way. Typically what a post serves, it just kind of continues the energy of the chorus, but it has like maybe a different top line that's maybe related to the chorus, but maybe is a little different. Super catchy. Yeah, it's a post chorus, but everybody in the industry calls it a post. At least everybody I know. But yeah, it's a post chorus. Yeah, so that's the answer there. So I'm probably answer a couple more questions. Actually, you know what? We kind of have to move from, because it's getting kind of late. We got to move from answering questions. I could do this all night. But I want to like give the opportunity for one more group to do a little quick check-in here. Hang on a sec. Let me just decline this. And I want to give the opportunity for one more group to just do a quick check-in and shout out. Anybody want to? Oh, I see you there, Justina. I went ahead and unmuted you, I think. Did I? There we go. All right. Are you? Yeah, I hear you.
Hi, John.
How's it going?
It's so great. I'm loving this class.
Oh, great.
Yeah, cheers. So I'm representing Team 2, and we are Gen Dream. Gen for generation, because we have a 13-year-old and a 71-year-old in our group. And we're actually about to meet up right after this Zoom meeting for our first time. We've been trying to coordinate schedules. And we all did our vision boards, I think, and we're going to share about that. And we're super excited.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, vision boards. That sounds great. Awesome. Well, yeah, I think this is just a great way to like kind of close things out. Is just thanks for like just giving a shout out. I want to shout out, like, big shout out to like all 29 teams. It's crazy. We have so many talented teams, and it's been so fun to watch how you're all working together, and just keep it up. You know, this is like the kind of energy like in the middle of the week that is really going to help like you know, Kathy and I are going to give you so much information. We're going to throw so much stuff at you, and you're all going to be able to help each other out to kind of like, well, what did you get out of this? What can we do? What actions can we take? How are you doing on the assignment? What can I do to help? You know, these kinds of things. This is really going to be like part of like the core support that you're going to get throughout this experience that you're going to take away with you forever. So, you know, just like make sure to treasure this time. It's going to be fun like journey for you all to take together. All 29 teams are on their own journey in a way. And I'm really looking forward to seeing like some of the music that comes out of, like, I'm sure some people inside the groups will collaborate with each other. It's also perfectly okay to collaborate with anybody you want to in the class. And we'll be talking more about that at a later point. But yeah, I mean, I think that's all I got for tonight. And I'm going to post, as I did last week, I'll copy and paste my notes and I'll post them up for everybody. I don't have like as detailed a notes as I did last week, but for you, but I do have an outline that'll help you out a little bit if you want to have the outline. And otherwise, we'll have this replay up. So if you want to watch it again, or if you're joining us later on, sorry, I probably should have welcomed you to the program much earlier, but I'm glad you checked it out on replay, and hopefully we'll catch you next time live. And yeah, but like, yeah, keep it up on the Facebook groups. Yeah. And just like keep on kicking ass. You guys are all doing so good. I'm very excited for how this is all going. And until next time, we'll just call it for a night here. All right. Have a good one, everybody.